Okay.
Welcome to the latest printed press, and I'm Aysen Djemal. Firstly, apologies for our late start. We had a couple of problems with technicalities, but we are here. And firstly, I'd like to say our thoughts are in Turkey after the massive earthquake in Izmir and Aydın and other areas, regions of Turkey. So our thoughts are with us, and we pray for them, and hopefully everything will be okay. We're actually going to have a live program about the earthquake straight after my stream. But on a different note, what we're covering tonight is we're going to be looking at surviving Corona, a warning, facts, fakery, and a hope for the future. And I'm very happy to have Professor Hale with me tonight, who is the author of that book. Welcome, Dr. Hale. How are we tonight?
Oh, looking forward to doing this and hoping to do some good as well. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening. And I would like to thank you very much for inviting me.
No, it's a pleasure as always. You've been on my programs before with your expertise for COVID-19, but obviously you have in recent times written a book about it, and I wanted to do a program specifically on that. But before we go into the sort of the facts about the book, would you be able to give our audiences a little bit of about your background and your profession, just to give them a bit of a backdrop?
Yeah, well, after leaving school, I did a gap year and I trained as a laboratory analyst in chemistry, obviously, because chemistry and biology were always my things. I then did a double major in arts, English and history, and of course, studying history. A lot of people, I think, when they look at history, think of knights in armor and deeds of valor and, you know, wars and assassinations as being the great drivers of history. But when you really study history at that level, you come to understand that, in fact, pandemics have had a far greater effect on history over a far longer period of time than any kind of armed conflict. That, along with natural catastrophes, you spoke of the tragic earthquake today. I mean, the effects of that are going to go on for so many years, and the same applies with, you know, things like the explosion at Krakatoa, etc. So I think I think one of the big problems that Western civilization has caused itself with this pandemic is we've lost touch with nature and have not realized how powerful nature can be. And you know, these events in history, you know, one thinks of the burial of Pompeii when Vesuvius erupted. They're actually far more significant than what are taught in sort of school history books. And I realized very early on that the pattern of ignoring nature was basically the cause of the pandemic, and I'll come back to that later. I did my master's degree in special education, hematology, neurology, and genetics. My profession is, well, I'm a writer. My particular specialism is autism and genetics, of which I've written a major book, which has been very, very well reviewed. And is published by a foundation in Beverly Hills, California. I'm a consultant in that area in the field of neurodiversity, and have done a great number of interviews and written articles on the subject and all the rest of it over a long period of time. I taught at the University of Bath. My background was in teaching after doing my degree, and my PhDs are One is in administration, and the other also in history, which included ballistics and forensic science. And I have an international diploma in integrated medicine.
Wow.
So I've got a very broad scientific and medical background, which I
Yes.
was able to apply a lot of different angles to this book.
Definitely.
As,
I
as,
mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think we need another program about the autism as well. That very much interests me. Obviously, being from a teaching background, I think we need to do that. And,
I would
you
love
know,
to.
more awareness about it, I think is very, very important. Um,
Yes.
but you've sort of touched upon it about people being more aware of nature, and obviously like today we've seen yet again how powerful nature can be and how unpredictable and how much damage it can cause, which is very, very sad and tragic. But
Yes.
generally, what are your personal views about COVID? I mean, what's sort of the message that you wanted to put across?
That unless we change our practices, our medical practices in the Western world, and unless we change our complete attitude to COVID, the point of the book, the warning, is that I'll put it this way: civilizations have collapsed back into rubble in less than 2 years in the face of pandemics. Some of the civilizations of South and Central Americas, which were very advanced, were destroyed by pandemics.
Mm,
In the Western world, in America and in much of Europe, uh, people looked at this virus and they thought, nah, nothing very special. They had no idea what it was capable of doing, what any virus is capable of doing if people don't act responsibly. And
mm,
the book is making the point that unless we change our policies immediately, and what I've proposed, I make no secret of it in the book, is radical. It's never been attempted before in the history of modern medicine. As I
okay.
said, I've got a good background in epidemiology. I've
Mm,
researched every single plague and pandemic right back to the one in Byzantium 1500 years ago with Justinian,
mm,
and seen what works and what doesn't. And I've also looked, of course, at modern responses, countries that have done absolutely brilliantly and have suffered very little consequence. New Zealand is one example,
yes, yes.
and Vietnam is another excellent example. And I've taken those two because they're so divergent. I mean, New Zealand is quite a large country composed of two main islands with a relatively small population, whereas Vietnam is a big country with a totally different climate, with some very big cities and a population of well over 100 million. And yet, that both countries, both governments have acted very, very similarly in many ways and have had a very positive result. In the Western world, in much of Europe, and in much of the United States,
Mm,
um, that level of responsibility, that level of listening to what science has been telling us, um, the complete lack of self-discipline, the lack of preparedness in terms of leaving frontline health staff without proper protection,
yes,
the problems that we have in our populations, where we have homelessness and such levels of poverty. There's nothing like overcrowded housing and badly nourished people. People put under stress because of the financial circumstances, having lost jobs, having lost their businesses. Um, that is the recipe for um, a civilization to collapse. And when you look at the figures coming out of some of the European countries, um, unless the recommendations in the book are adopted to a pretty great degree, then there isn't going to be very much left of Western Europe and parts of the US within the next 18 months. That's the
yes.
warning.
Yeah, I mean, could you tell us a little bit about, so that's the warning. We've sort of gone, because that was going to be my next question. What's the warning? But obviously you've sort of explained that. And we've actually got somebody, good Neil, saying, interesting title, what do you mean by fakery? Dr. Ian Hale, explain further. So you've sort of talked a little bit about the facts, but what is the solution? Because you said you've got some quite radical ideas. Can we go
Yes.
into that a little bit?
Yeah, but first of all, answer the question. Fakery. There are an awful lot of companies who are selling PPE, for example, personal
Yes.
protection equipment,
Yeah.
which is fake equipment and which doesn't protect people. There's been an awful lot of fake news about COVID. It was not made in a laboratory. It's impossible. I've worked in some of the best laboratories in the world, and I've worked on genetic engineering. You couldn't, anybody who looks at this virus down an electron microscope, which I've done, can see very well how it's evolved. And it's a natural virus. It's what's called it happened by an action called recombinance. And we're actually able to study it as it's mutating and developing now. And what we're experiencing that people are calling the second wave isn't. It's the same virus that has been, after lockdowns, that has been allowed to explode again across populations. And that's what's causing the problem now that the colder weather's coming. And the fact that people are still not masking properly, they're still not doing basic hygiene, they're still having illegal gatherings, and they seem proud of themselves for doing it. I'll make a prophecy right now. Unless things are handled properly in Europe,
Yes.
the United Kingdom is facing somewhere in the region of 750,000 infections before the beginning of next May. And bearing in mind that even people who recover from COVID, that is,
Yeah.
people who don't die, are very badly affected, and that with the new variant of the virus, the average age of death has dropped to 28. That is going to rip the entire center of our society out, leading to the collapse of social systems, transport systems, food supply, and the health system. So we've got to ignore fakery. People have been saying that certain drugs work. They don't. I've made it very clear in the book which drugs
Yes.
will work and which ones won't, and the reasons for that.
Okay. Which could you summarize which ones do work?
Yeah, well, one thing that's been discovered is that people who've had the BCG vaccination, which is the standard vaccine against tuberculosis,
Yes.
are far less affected by COVID. So the first thing that we should be doing is giving everybody who hasn't had a BCG vaccination, we should be doing that. Okay? People
Okay.
who have had it, we should be giving them a booster. Everybody should be getting their flu shots, because there are two very nasty flu strains that are going to be hitting kind of about nowish, between now and the middle of November. And Western society cannot stand a twin onslaught of the two variations we have now of COVID-19,
Yeah.
plus the mutation, which is going to strike somewhere towards the end of January if the virus continues to mutate at its current rate. And we know from history that the first mutation of a virus, that's the true second wave, and it's always much stronger than the first. When I'm talking about 750,000 cases over the winter, that may be a very big underestimate, unless we really take control of this. And I've explained how to take control of it in the book. We
Would you
have
be
to
able to
understand.
summarize for us how we can take control?
Yes. First of all, we have to take some humility. We are not stronger than the virus. The virus is stronger than us. What we have to do, instead of fighting the virus, which is what we've been trying to do,
Yeah.
we need to defend against it. That means we need to make sure that everybody is well fed. We need to make sure that as many people as possible get the BCG vaccinations. We need to make sure as many people as possible get the flu vaccinations. We don't have a vaccine against COVID yet.
Mm.
And even when we do, it's going to take a long time to get it to enough people. We need to make sure that our frontline and our second line health staff and other essential workers, particularly in the transport industry and in the food industry, have got full, proper protection.
Mm.
We have to make sure that we've got a big stock of the drugs that I set out in the book, including NHC, remdesivir, and quite a few others.
What are
The
these
one
drugs?
that
Are they like paracetamol? What are they for a layperson like me?
sorry,
What are these drugs? Would you be able to
uh,
explain for?
these are
Can you get
powerful
them over
antibiotics.
the counter? Are they available to public?
They're not available without prescription, but they are. The
Okay.
health service does have these drugs, and if the health service doesn't have them, it needs to get them very quickly. But there
Mm.
are quite a few, and one of the ones that Britain's been using, dexahydrochlorine, it's a powerful steroid. It's not the kind of steroid that athletes use. It's a corticosteroid. It's not the kind that athletes use illegally. And Britain was the pioneer of using that, and that's been very successful in about 1/3 of cases. And there are other treatments. One of the other big points of my book is that this has to be an international effort. We have to
Yes.
share we have to share protocols. We don't know yet the best treatment for this virus. Different countries are having different levels of success with
Mm.
different groups of people using different combinations of treatments, and not only drug treatment. Um, we need to work together and share that information. I've put in the book a protocol for hospitals to follow for people who need hospital care. Um,
Yeah.
there needs to be an urgent call for extra medical staff. It's all very well building Nightingale hospitals, but if you haven't got the people to staff them,
Of
you're not
course.
going to be able to deal with more than 750,000 cases. The health service is facing imminent collapse after Christmas, unless we start to behave very differently. So my point is that instead of attacking the virus and spending so much time and money in research, and there are all these clever academic papers coming out explaining the chemical pathways. That's why I wrote the book, because hardly anybody would understand these things. So
Yes.
I've tried to keep it as jargon free as is possible without dumbing it down. You've got to respect the reader. It is intended for the general public and the professional side. And also I've examined the social, the psychological, and the economic problems caused. I'm hoping to write a second book soon on how we solve those problems. But until we get the virus and other things out of control, other things that are coming out of control, and understand that these pandemics are going to become more and more common over the next 20 years, we have to build far more robust systems. And that means medical systems, social systems, and economic systems. And we're
Yes.
not doing that.
No.
And I've put, right at the conclusion of the book is what needs to happen. How we need to test much more. We need to be much more rapid in our response where um, COVID hotspots appear and quarantine them very quickly. National lockdowns, curfews, they cause a bigger problem than they solve. They wreck the economy. They wreck people psychologically and emotionally.
Yes. So
Um,
you're saying that's not the way, because that was my
I'm,
next
I'm
question.
stating
Is
I'm
that okay?
stating straight out it's not the way. It's
Mm.
it's been done. It's not worked. Why are people doing it again? It's almost the definition of insanity to repeat something, um, and it doesn't work, and you keep repeating it.
Yeah.
That's nuts. But it's no good me saying don't do that.
Mm.
That's fair enough. But what I've proposed in its place. Um, Not only will work, it's been proven to work. It's pretty much what New Zealand did. It's very
Yeah.
much what Thailand did. The book is short. I did it deliberately short. It's currently only published as an ebook because I wanted to keep it inexpensive. But I
Yeah.
do want to find a publisher who will expand it into a paper edition because because it's worth doing that so that it can go into libraries and
How can we
universities.
find it currently? We're going to
Sorry?
put a link anyway at the bottom, but just so that
Yes.
our viewers know verbally, how can we find it currently, the book?
It's published by Smashwords. It's published in all the main um, forms like EPUB. The only one it's not available on is Kindle because Amazon will not publish anything written about COVID.
Oh, okay.
Don't ask me why, but they don't. But Smashwords is a far better is a far better publisher for specific for books. Amazon covers everything. It's you can buy anything from Amazon, whereas Smashwords is a specialist book producer, and they've made a brilliant job of it, and I'd like to thank them publicly
Yeah.
at this point.
I mean, we've in our last 5 minutes, unfortunately, because obviously Eurogench is going to be going live to Izmir, to Turkey.
Yeah,
It's about the earthquake, just giving our viewers an update about that, which tragically happened today,
yeah,
and our thoughts go out to them as well. But
yeah.
really, I mean, we need to do this program again and talk about your future writings, and also maybe a little bit more in depth where we have a whole hour, because I mean it's extremely interesting and actually very, very important for the
Yes.
future of our civilization, to be honest with you. But I mean,
Yes, and that
general
is not an
advice.
exaggeration, by the way. I mean, when you look at the way it's tearing through parts of the US and you see the results. I mean, San Francisco, a third of the population are now living in the streets. And that can happen here. And it can be more than a third with our harsh winters, the harsh winters that we experience in Northern Europe.
Yes,
Um, when I warn about the collapse of our society, I am not joking. And that's why people need to buy this book and read it well. I would be perfectly happy to act as a consultant for government or companies or uh, hospitals, health service, universities, um, because I am a I'm an older person with a considerable amount of experience
yes,
in these particular fields. But
mm,
I and of course the book is also about the individual, about what people can do in their daily lives in order to cut down their risk of
yes.
infection
But
and of death.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, I think
that's a word people don't like to use, that word death, but
yes,
that's what
but
this
it's
virus is doing.
We've got a few comments, Dr. Professor Hale, just so that we go through them before we finish the programme. Abby Hussain has put Melbourne, Australia showed strict measures can produce results, be it with a massive economic hit. But I think that's something that you said you're going to cover in your next book. But yes, of course, it
Yes.
has economically hit us now. And you're saying that a lockdown isn't the solution, that you need to what is it? What is the solution then? If we can't have lockdowns, obviously because that
Well,
will
the
economically hit
solution I
us.
put in the book is a combination of many different things. But what
Mm,
we have to do is to have mass testing and to
yeah,
continue testing. And as soon as there's a spike, close that area, quarantine that small area very quickly, but without restricting people's access within that area. For example, shutting off one particular town, but
mm,
not imposing curfews or anything, and making sure that town's supplied and looked after, and making sure that nobody goes in and goes out. If medical and food supplies are needed, they can be airdropped in without any risk of contamination. And that's the completely new kind of strategy that we need to
yes,
think of. What I've done in the book, I've proposed things that have never been done before
mm,
at any point in history, because what we've done so far has failed. And you've only got to look at the figures coming out of Italy, out of Germany, out of Spain, out of the UK, out of the US, and other countries to see that, you know, we've tried everything, you know, because this is a new virus. We've tried everything that we've tried with previous viruses, and of course it hasn't worked because this is new. So what I did was completely think the other way around. Being Asperger's myself, Asperger's syndrome, and we'll talk about that hopefully in a future program.
100%.
I think of things and look at things in completely different ways, and that's some of the lessons I've learned from history that I've
Yeah.
applied to this very day.
Yes, definitely. We've got lots of positive comments coming in as well. I think you've given people a bit of hope, and we will
Well,
repeat the
there
name.
is a lot of hope. There are a lot of simple things people can do,
Yeah.
and that they should be demanding of their health services and demanding of their governments that they can do right now. We've got till the new year. We've got 2 months to get this right in Europe and in the US. And you know, there is still time to save ourselves if we get the drugs, if we get the PPE, if we make sure that people are protected financially and socially. Not only can we come through this, but because of the way it spurred medical science and the research money gone into it, we can learn so much because of
Yeah.
this extra research
Yeah, that
effort
leads me on to the
that
last few
that
questions.
we could. Can I just finish that bit?
Yes.
We could propel medical science forward. I mean, look at the development of these genetically based vaccines. If they work, we could propel medical science forward by 50 years in less than 5 years. So yeah, I see this as a great opportunity for medical science, but also by working together, the international teams, I see it also as a great opportunity to build much closer relations, much more peaceful relations, and much more positive relations, but from nations across the world. We have a common enemy. We can band together peacefully and with a common objective. Because make no mistake, we're fighting a war for our lives against this virus.
Yeah.
Every country in the world is. If we unite, we can do so much good and we can
Yes.
defeat it.
Yeah, Fatima Mohammed's put, thank you, Dr. Hale, very informative. Michaela has put, excellent, Professor Hale, keep spreading the knowledge, tell them about our research. This virus won't go away, we will need to manage it like other viruses. So our last points before we close the programme, we've got about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Politics and science don't mix, she's put. Let the scientists lead. Yes, I agree. I agree with that one.
Yes, we need to let them lead, but scientists, first of all, don't normally they're not normally very good public communicators, and that's a role that I would very much like to take, sort of like a bridge between very specialist scientists and government and the general public, because my knowledge is broader than you know, looking at particular chemical pathways, for example. But yeah, we should be listening to medical science, but we should be listening to clinical health professionals like Dr. McKellar. And I really must say, before we finish the program, without her support and her research and encouragement, this book wouldn't have been written. And she is someone that people really need to listen to, because she's got a tremendous depth of research, a tremendous depth of experience, and also that most precious of gifts, insight.
Yes, definitely. She's a diamond for us all, definitely. Thank you very much, Professor Ian Hale, for coming on my program. And if you could just tell us the name of your book again, and you can get it where as well, just before we close
Yeah,
the program.
it's called Surviving Corona:
A
a
warning.
warning, facts, fakery, and hope for the future.
And we can.
And as soon as we finish the program, I will send you the link to it,
Fantastic.
and I'll also send you the cover as a, well. I'll send all of us, all the viewers, the cover art as well separately, so that it can be very broadly advertised. And I welcome anybody who wants to join me on Facebook, for example. Anybody who's got extra questions that they'd like to send to you that you could relay to me, I'll answer them as best I can.
Okay,
I'm
brilliant.
very happy to do a Facebook Live if you feel like you want to do that. You know, but we
We'll get
need
you back on the
to,
program anyway, definitely. But we'll put the links
yes,
at the bottom of the
that'd be
page,
great.
so people can access the book. But thank you very much again, Professor Hale, for coming onto my program. Very informative,
Thank
and
you.
like I said, sharing your knowledge. And we shall do this again, I think, in the next couple of weeks, because, like you
I hope
said,
so.
you know, until December we've got a bit of time to maybe spread the word and the knowledge, like Michaela said, and try and manage this virus as best that we can, really. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you to all the viewers. And please read the book, share it, and share the link, and make it go. And
Viral.
let's make the book go viral, shall we? And not
Shall we not use
not the
that?
disease.
Yeah,
I tend to do
make it
that.
popular and well read, but for our own
Yeah.
benefits, definitely, certainly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all our viewers. Thank you very much for all the comments. That's it from us, from Eurogench TV. Have a
And
good
one
evening.
moment, if I
Oh, yes.
could, may
Yes.
I send my condolences to the people of Turkey and my hopes for their recovery in the near future, and that the international community will support them. And I'd like to thank our viewers and to encourage them to do all that they can after these two appalling tragedies in Turkey today.
Yeah, I know it is. And we're going to be having some live coverage of that
Yeah,
tragedy in a moment. Thank you very much. That's all from Eurogench TV. Have a good evening. Good night.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeniliklerle hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Dünyada bir ilk ürünlerimizden full otomatik açılır kapanır sandıklı bazamız. Bir dokunuşla açılan, bir dokunuşla kapanabilen, bayanlarımıza, yaşlılarımıza kolaylık sağlayabilen sandıklı bazamız mağazamızda hizmetinize sunulmuştur. Yıl sonuna kadar full ortopedik baza seti alan her müşterimize 2 adet full ortopedik Memoro Visco yastık hediyemizdir. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok. Ancon Furniture.